joining this very special program. And my name is Amish Tripathi. I'm the director of the Nehru Center right here in London. It is India's cultural outpost in the UK and in the larger West. And we love to speak of things Indian, not just to those among the Indian diaspora, but to all, including non-Indians who are interested in Indian culture. And we had a wonderful program last month where Shri M, who I call Gurudev Ji, had regaled us with his knowledge and wisdom, but peppered with his very inimitable wit. Uh, and to shepherd that conversation together was Lady Mohini Noon, who is whose home is right here in London, but she's presently in India, and she's presently where her heart lies. But we are hoping that she'll come back to London soon, and we are waiting for. I was just so delighted when this thought came of doing a program so soon after the previous program, because the occasion is so perfect. As Shiriyam said, we were speaking briefly just before the Facebook Live started, and Shiriyam said very correctly that yesterday was Krishna Janmashtami. Lord Krishna was born yesterday. It was a dark and stormy night, a difficult night, uh, and as is often said in the Indian way, that wisdom and light emerges after a very difficult period. And we are going through a difficult period, the entire world, this COVID pandemic. We were speaking, Shriyam was saying that, he wonders whether he will enjoy life outside a lockdown after this. So, just a few snatches of conversation I had were so delightful that I can't wait for Shriyam and Mohini ji to start their conversation. So, without further ado, I leave it to Mohini ji to please start the conversation and regale Nehru Center and all our Shubchintaks, our viewers across the world, across not just the UK but across the world, watching this very special broadcast. Mohini ji.
धन्यवाद अमिश जी.
I thank the director of the Nehru Center, Amish Tripathi, a very distinguished man of letters himself. And how's your latest book doing, Immortal India?
It's doing well, thank you, thank you. All the blessings of Lord Krishna and Lord Shiva.
So it's a great auspicious day to meet. Yeah, it's Janamashtami still because it's the day after the birth. And we are also coming up to the anniversary, the birthday of Free India on the 15th of August. So the title is from the famous French philosopher, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who said, "Man is born free and everywhere he is in chains." So Rousseau's famous idea challenged tradition, but that was in the 18th century. But today we have with us a great yogi, Shri M, who will enlighten us about concepts of freedom, inner freedom, outer freedom, different types of freedoms. And at the time of independence, the potent image was of the Mother India in chains. So where does true Swatantrata lie for ourselves and for the countries we live in, whichever country it is? Shriyam, would you like to just...
Okay, I was just listening to you and I got lost in... Okay. Yeah. So, can we start with... yeah. Now, Independence Day is coming. So, we have Swatantriya on the 14th of August. We celebrate every year what happened several years ago. Yeah, I need to also differentiate a little bit. We need to, when we look at this, between Swatantriya, which we call freedom, and Swarajya. Both these concepts were built into the constitution also, both Swarajya and Swatantra. We said the freedom, those who spend their lives in jails, were beaten by the police, who were fighting for India's freedom. They said that unless we have our own Swarajya, country governed by ourselves, which is our own, we cannot expect to have Swatantriya, freedom. I mean, they were talking from the economic, political, and various views. But my subject is, I'm more into the spiritual aspect of it. So for me, when you say Swatantriya, it means a couple of things. The word in ancient times used in the spiritual field, in the spiritual, what do you call that? I don't know what to call it. In the spiritual aspect of Swatantriya was called moksha. The Vedantists called it moksha. The yogis and Sankhyans called it kaivalya. And the Buddhists, who of course have derived, Windows detected some hard disk. So, and one more word which is used by the Yogacara Buddhism from Buddha's time onwards, called nirvana. Now, nirvana is also a Jain word. It's used also in Jain philosophy. So, if we look at all these, there seems to be something to do with breaking bondage and being free. So, when you say chains, that is the subject of today's discussion. When you say chains, it is a depiction and a metaphor for being chained and not being able to free oneself. Political, philosophical, religious, as well as metaphysical. All these things are included because the aim is moksha, freedom. While, even though we set out in the beginning, as a Buddhist says, set forth in the beginning to find freedom, we almost always, I wouldn't say always, end up being enslaved, chained, conditioned by various factors. So, from the point of view of a spiritual person and a spiritual journey, this is a very important concept, to free oneself from chains. Well, in India, we freed ourselves from foreign domination. Okay, fine. Done. That is over. Now, what is the rethink we have to do now? How to free ourselves from the bondage and how to be free. And that is not like taking sannyas, believe me. So, if you have another question, immediately we can start.
I thought what is this? Is it a natural urge to freedom? And what is the importance of being free for the soul, for the evolution of the soul?
Absolutely. It is a natural desire for everyone to be free. You put a little small child into a room, give him all the toys he loves, and nowadays TV and all that, or video players or whatever. But after some time, the child would definitely want to come out of the room. He won't be satisfied with staying in the same place all the time. He wants to get out. You see, you go back to our birth. It's actually a beautiful metaphor of being a kind of chained to the mother and then being released. You look, 10 months we are in the womb of the mother. In fact, not in a bad way, even in a good way. See, there are many kinds of chains. There are golden chains, there are copper chains, there are iron chains, there are chains made of thorns, like Jesus kept on his head, the crown of thorns. So there are many kinds of chains. This is a golden chain, I understand, in the mother's womb, because but still, you're bound. You're in darkness. We don't know exactly if the little infant inside sees darkness or light. We don't know. Perhaps we can't say. Or some may see light and some may see darkness. We can't say this. But definitely in a space, covered, controlled, looked after, but chained, not free. So when does this freedom happen? After 10 months. In fact, We had a South Indian singer called Tyagaraja, not Tyagaraja Swami, but Tyagaraja Bhagavatar, who was put in jail. So from jail he sang, he said, it's like the 10 bars of my cell are like the 10 months in my mother's womb. Here I am. He counted the bars. They were 10. And he sang and he said, when I come out, then I will be free. And of course, after that, he wrote many Tamil poems and so on. Anyway, so inside this, now what happens? 10 months, the muscles of the womb protect this baby. Yes. Now when the baby is ready to come out, when it is fully formed, the same muscles which protected the child push it out. The muscles have to push. You have no other way. Even if you do a cesarean, you need the muscles to push. So what I'm saying is, why was then the child given the freedom? Then again, you get enslaved in various chains afterwards. That's a different story. At the moment, birth. So you're born into a new world. You see the light. After some months, you begin to see your mother properly. You begin to see the world. The first contact is the mother. There's no other way. And if the mother, for some unfortunate reason, passes away, the wet nurse or whoever looks after the child is the first contact. Then the world. Then, in fact, I think the little child, even before it realizes its own self, realizes that there is somebody there, my mother. And then, oh, I am the child. And it becomes two and so on and so on. You know, like splitting into many, starting with one. So this is freedom. So, if you really want to enjoy the freedom, I think that you should also figure out first that you're bound. There are many people, I know, many whom probably, who are bound but think they are free. Freedom has so many concepts. So, to understand bondage, or to understand the chains with which we are bound, is the first step. Not to hate it, but to understand it, is the first step to be able to free oneself from it. You know, if you're tied, handcuffed with a chain, let's say, tied with a chain, you know that it's not easy to break it. So you're all the time studying it to see which is the way out. So for that, you have to study the chain first. And the chain is the world around us. We need to study it carefully before we figure out how to be free of it. Believe me, usually if they're golden chains, we are very happy with it. It's only when they're iron chains and so on, then we get into, no. So actually most people do not desire freedom. They desire to be transformed or from the, let's say, cage, from the copper or the iron cage into a golden cage. And then we think that we are free, but we are still caged birds. Like Kabir said,
Frightening in that case. Is it frightening? Is it and especially for women, because what is freedom for women? Because the golden cage applies even more to women than men, I think, in some cases.
That is because of the tradition that we have. But I don't think so. I think it applies to all human beings. The women's chains are different. The men's chains are different. But there are chains. We are bound. And then, like Kabir said, one person among many then begins to fly out. Ud jayega panchi akela, out. So that panchi has found out how to free itself from the shackles and fly out. Please understand this. I am not talking about physical chains. It's not just that. It's the mind. It's the mind. You can live in this world with all your people, family, associates, and still be free. It's more an attitude of mind, but this wanting to be free is, I think, a built-in kind of instinct in all human beings. We want to break the chains. We want to fly. Even mind. We want to break our limitations. We want to soar high up in the sky. It's all part. Now, in the spiritual field, I want to tell you this is an ancient story. It comes from Plato. In Plato's Republic, he talks about this metaphor of a group of people living inside a cave
Yeah.
who,
Metaphor.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, in Republic, where they're chained to the walls of the
Correct.
cave and all their activities with that chains on. They know only one direction to go. And they cannot see the world or themselves.
Correct.
There is a fire at one end and
They
it
see the
reflects
shadow.
their
Yeah.
images on the other, and they can see only the images. So they think these images are the reality
True.
because they are chained. So he says rarely some individual breaks the chain and comes up above and looks out of the cave and sees, oh my God, what a world this is. Never, so it may also take time for the person to recover from that freedom. That's also a tremendous thing. Many years ago, sorry, am I continuing? Do you have anything to in
Yeah, yeah,
between?
yeah,
I had
please.
a question, if I may cut in on the allegory of the cave.
Sir,
Mohanji, may I?
yes, please.
Yeah,
Yes.
what happens is, yeah, because I mean, Sriyan, Gurudev, what you said is so right that there are some who come out of the cave, of the allegory of the cave, what Plato spoke of. And some of them may want to come back and tell people in the cave, look, there's a world outside. And some of them oppose it. No, I'm happy here. Right?
Ah, ha, ha,
So
ha,
what
ha,
happens in
ha.
a situation where some have come out and the world outside is not comfortable, like the way we are at this point of time? It is a pandemic, it's a very difficult situation. Is this a time when people get even more comfortable with? You find so many people looking for authoritarian governments, where things are under control, where we'll feel safe. So building on that allegory of the cave, Gurudev, will it happen that things are too difficult outside, let me be back here, it's nice, it's comfortable, even if I know I'm not free? Is that happening? And if so, how do we fight it?
That's not going to last. That is the problem. We might for some time kind of imagine ourselves to be satisfied with this, but then again, at some point, it's sure to break out. You know, Also, it is a question of what you said about being difficult to face the wide world and so on. Uh, Several years ago, some of the monks belonging to the not monks is not the word because there are lamas are not actually monks. They can be non-celibate lamas also. Some of the lamas who practice the teachings of the Kagyu order, from where Milarepa comes, they used to shut themselves up in small cells in Tibet, in the high mountains, totally from light, sunlight, in complete darkness. Many people don't know. This is called the transfer of consciousness. In this darkness for 40 days, sometimes 3 years, 4 years, they used to stay there. Food used to be passed through a trap once a day. What food? Sampa and some simple things. And they used to live there. And idea was, in that darkness, in that practice which you do called transfer of consciousness, you are able to leave your physical body. The consciousness disassociates itself and moves out. For perfecting that, they used to stay inside. I'm saying this not about that technique, but something else which you said kind of stuck a bell. Then came the Chinese. They rolled their tanks into these places, and these guys, these lamas, if they have to come out to the outside world, they have to gradually let in little bit light, little bit light, little bit light, till they get accustomed. They bulldozed the little hermitages, these little room cells. Suddenly they saw the sun. Many of them went blind. I don't know if His Holiness the Dalai Lama has mentioned it anywhere, I'm not sure, but it is so. They suddenly came out and they went completely blind. And they suffered because it was suddenly facing the whole sun. Therefore, also in the spiritual field, if the movement towards that freedom also has to be gradual, And once you touch that, it also takes time for you to get adjusted with that, and then to get adjusted with the outside world. Now, since we are on the Buddhist principle, what you said, that some people are free and they go away. Okay. Now, these are called, according to the Mahayana Buddhists, the Arhants, the free ones who have touched nirvana. But there are some who have broken their chains and they are on the verge of, one foot is in nirvana, the other foot is still here. They are going to put the other foot also in nirvana. They said, hey, wait, there are so many in darkness. I don't mind going back till at least a few people are taken with me back to nirvana, knowing fully well that going back into chains is going to be a conditioning. That sacrifice is called the Bodhisattva sacrifice. There are Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. That is called the Bodhisattva. Now, I would say that, yes, we need some kind of control. I'm not saying we need discipline, we need control, we need rules. Especially in a country, you can't have a free for all. You need. But if you look at India, we've been nurtured in a tradition of freedom. From ancient times, everything that the monk or the wanderer or the seeker or the yogi sought was freedom. Knowing fully well that to reach this freedom, in the beginning, some kind of chains are essential. Now, therefore, if you're not free, if one is not free, one cannot see the chains, actually. It's only when little bit of that whiff of wanting to be free comes, then one begins to understand, oh, the chains. Till then, till then we don't even think about it. We just
So
carry
even you
on.
try to pull away that you feel ki, arey, there's a chain holding me back. If you're
Exactly.
not pulling away,
You
you are
don't.
where you are. Yeah.
So,
Can a human being be in the physical body be truly free? And how does one recognize, how to discern such a being?
Yeah. True. True. Very good
you know,
question.
if the concept of moksha or kaivalya or nirvana, which is described in the ancient texts, is truly real, it has to be in the body. You can't, look, this is another wonderful thing about, please, I keep harping on our Indian tradition, but it's a fact. Look, it's an ancient, nobody can deny the fact that it is one of the most ancient philosophies and cultural system in which people look for freedom. What is all this Upanishad about? Freedom. It, and so I'm sometimes surprised that for 100 years we were under British rule. I didn't know why we didn't come out before. Why? Because we also have the other side, patience. Don't want to create violence unnecessarily. Because even the Gita says one of the Yama Niyamas are ahimsa.
What about
So,
acceptance?
acceptance, we have to accept. There is no other way out. There are certain things which you can't change, you need to accept them. But the spirit of wanting to be free of it shouldn't go away in this acceptance. That acceptance becomes a golden chain. So anyway, the concept is, if you are not free while you are still in this body, then there is no meaning in that freedom or moksha. So it is not an otherworldly philosophy that when you die, then you will be free or you will go to heaven or whatever.
How
It,
far should one go to claim one's freedom? Could you talk a little bit about yourself? Because you left home at the age of 19. So there was a very strong urge to be free. So it's an example, and share some of your own feelings about that.
yeah, mine is an extreme case. I mean, I don't know if people will run away from home for that. And there many have done it in the past, but for me, the freedom was not from. I was very well looked after at home. Let me put it. I was in a golden cage. Quite good. We were very affluent, well off. The family, there was no problem. My father's greatest regret was that I never took up his construction business. Yeah, he thought this guy is the only son, so he, you know what. So we were well looked after. We were quite affluent. But I realized at some point that I was in a golden cage. It was all gold. But I was basically because my freedom of thought was being interfered with. I wanted to search, seek. It may be that at the age of 9, Maheshwarnath Babaji, not maybe, just put his hand on my head, blessed hand on my head, and so things happened. My brain, something happened. Good or bad, I don't know. I was, in fact, somebody took me to a psychiatrist, some of our elders, and I was young, and he said, okay, after talking, he said, can the parents and others stay out? So they stay, can I, let me have a chat with him. Then he sat down, then he said, okay, so now among the principal Upanishads, I said, doctor, they are waiting outside. I was 15 years at that time. And, so all this happened. So there's something happened to my head. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So I felt that there was something beyond. There was a freedom. There was something beyond. There was something spiritual, yes. But I said, I cannot touch that by starting with a belief. I don't want it. I'm not going to use the words because it may create problems. But I didn't want to say that I'm going to start my spiritual search by first believing that there is whatever, one God, or whatever. Let me look into this. So I couldn't find anything that talks about such things except the Yoga Sutras, the Upanishads, the Gita. There is an enquiry. It's not a question of belief. It's enquiry. So my freedom, my desire for freedom was to break free from this situation where I have to believe and get into the path of inquiry. That was my problem. Believe me, otherwise I was quite comfortable. No problem.
Actually, then it's what comes through is freedom from oneself, one's own patterns in life, which keep repeating it themselves also. How to be free from oneself, and also this whole question of having confidence to do it instead of saying, oh, just in case, it goes wrong.
When it becomes so compelling, you're like a fish out of water. You want to go to the water. It becomes so compelling. See, for me, it was a one-pointed search. And I think that kind of serious search will begin only if it becomes one-pointed. But you can't induce it. I mean, you can't say, somebody did that, so I'm also going to imitate. Not possible. Therefore, this is what I'm trying to say, that one need to study the chain, whatever metal it is made of, the chain. Study it so carefully that you begin to realize, oh my God, this is a dead weight. I need to get out of it. So the first step is to realize that, and that realization is not possible if you try to run away or to avoid it. You need to look at it carefully. Okay, since we are on this chain topic, there's the psychological, deeper, meditative aspect of a chain. One is, we think that our thought processes are a continuous whole. W-H-O-L-E, continuous whole. But actually they are only like links of a chain. One thought comes, and in a very fast, we can't even measure the speed, it disappears into the past and a new thought comes. Then future we don't know, because future is only a projection. But past, yes. So one thought is gone, another comes. Another thought comes, another comes. And so on and so on. But it's so fast and continuous that we tend to look at it as a continuous chain, as a continuous whole. Actually, it's a chain. So in some yogic practices, it's also there in Zen and in the Dzogchen Buddhist practices and so on, even in some Sufi practices. You penetrate, you watch yourself so carefully while your thoughts are moving. Of course, understanding that the watcher is also thought. At the moment, you don't know if it is other than thought, is also thought. And as you keep watching, then at some point you become so absorbed in that, not in the chain, but in the watching, that you begin to see the gap between the chains, between the links. Links form a chain. You begin to see the gap. When you see the gap, you're free. So that requires looking carefully at. And the other thing, if you notice, this is the analogy of a figure and a reality together, in some way related. When you say chain, it is used for binding, right?
Yeah.
Chain. Well, not so much binding, it's also where gold chains are there.
Slaving.
Slaving and decoration and so on. Anyway, so, but look at the structure of a chain. In most parts, the chain is empty. Seriously, it is only in some small portion, even volume wise, which has some material as we know it. The rest is empty. So, one emptiness, this is also the symbol for shunya when you do the chin mudra in meditation. This combined together to form two zeros here, two shunyas, and we have three fingers pointing up, which the Vedanta says is Sat, Chit and Ananda. In fact, somebody put it very nicely by saying the thumb usually points to oneself and the index finger to the outside world. When these two are seen as not different really, then all that is left is Satchidananda, Sat, Chit and Ananda. I mean, it's symbology. But when you look at it, actually emptiness or shunya, the Vedantin would like to use the word purna, is connected together by a thin layer, a thin part of material. It goes and there is only that emptiness. So, to realize that even in chains, even in enslavement, there is in essence an emptiness. There is a negative aspect, also the positive aspect, is to be actually free of the chains.
Well, something I wanted to ask you, which enchains us, is food, because we can't
Absolutely.
live without it. And very recently, you have done this massive emergency food program, the Satsang Seva Mission. What do our scriptures say about the importance and the sacredness of food? And is there any way that we can look at this? Because we are bound to food, our bodies are. So how do we free ourselves out of this? It's not possible.
You cannot free yourself from that. When you reach a spiritual state, you know that you are free, but the body, as long as it lasts, needs food to survive. I mean, there may be rare cases of some yogis who don't eat and so on, but it's very rare. Mostly they are stories. I used to know a yogi who they said never ate any food. In the night they used to supply food from behind the cave. So one shouldn't get caught up in this. When simple food is available, why would you want to do tapasya only to not eat food? I mean, there are other things. You have to attain your freedom, not eat food. If Ramakrishna Paramahamsa ate food, and if Swami Vivekananda ate food, and if Adi Shankara ate food, why are we trying not to eat food? I mean, that's not the thing. Yeah, there is a chain in food also. Now we realize when you're really hungry, you break the habitual change of wanting only one kind of food. That's also a chain. I will eat only this kind of food. I will eat only that kind of food. Now, when you're really hungry, any food is okay. You take it with great due respect and reverence and eat it because your stomach has to be filled. Now, the ancient Vedas say, in fact, the Vedantic division of the human being into different sheaths. They're called koshas. The most important, the first kosha is Annamaya kosha, which means Anna means food. That means that sheath which is sustained by food, physical body. It's very important to keep the. Now, a yogi is not one who starves himself to death. A yogi eats nutritious food. You protect the body, you look after the body, then the mind is okay in its place. So food is very important. Now among the Vaishnavites, it's very interesting. The Vaishnava Sampradaya says that Krishna, they are worshippers of Krishna. Godhead is Krishna. Krishna and Krishna's Nama, name, and Krishna's Prasada have equal standing. There is no difference. That's why if you go to like ISKCON is an offshoot of the Gaudiya Math and the Vaishnava order. If you go and if when food is given, they say, please take only what is enough for you. Don't waste. Why? Because it is sacred. Because it is offered to Krishna. And therefore Krishna and Krishna's name and Krishna's food which has been offered is the same. It is stand on an equal. So reverence to food is a built-in sentiment, a good sentiment, of course, positive sentiment in the Indian culture. Food is very important. You don't waste food. Whatever you have, you eat it. It's not because we have lived in poverty. At one time, poverty was not there. Maybe it came after some time. But so therefore, food is very important. And you cannot survive without food. Food means...
What's that sacredness, attitude of sacredness towards food? And what you said in this recent feeding program, that it is tapasya to feed a hungry person. What is the attitude?
Attitude should be that you are offering food to Krishna. Seriously. Because the only devatas that you know are the visible ones. Other devatas, yogis might have experienced in a higher plane of existence and so on and so forth. But the only thing that an ordinary man, ordinary human being, knows is a walking, talking temple of the divine, which is the human frame. Now, if you say Pada Sevana, one of the sevas done by the Vaishnavas, actually Pada Sevana means serving the Lord in human form. So, even when you give it with respect. Don't throw food. You take it, yeah. And when you eat with respect. My Guru, Maheshwarnath Babaji used to tell me, when every time you eat one morsel of food, remember time is eating you. You know, you are eating food, time is eating you. So
but you never saw him eat, did you?
I have never seen, he ate. If I got him some very good ripe mangoes from one of the mango fields on the way as we walked, Langdas, he would sit down and enjoy the mango and say, "Acha hai, bahut acha hai. Khao, aaram se. Anand karo, khao." So it's not that he was keeping out food because of any principle or anything, but he didn't require it for some reason.
He didn't eat to live.
He didn't eat to live. People live to eat also, but
well, in London, unfortunately, we've been going down in that direction for a very long time, and it occupied a different space to what food was meant to occupy.
Yeah.
But some of our traditions and Ayurveda, you maybe very briefly you can say some of the principles of healthy eating.
Ayurveda as well as the yogic life. In Ayurveda, Ayurveda is not the science of medicine. Ayu is life. So Ayurveda is one of the Veda Angas, one of the subsidiaries of the Vedas. And it says it is the science of life. It's not prescribing medicines. Nowadays you can get Ayurvedic medicine on the counter, but that's not Ayurveda. Ayurveda is how to sustain life. You're right. The question itself is, that is Ayurveda. And therefore it has something called Dinachara. That means what are the observances for daily living. Without that, the medicines prescribed by the Vaidya are not going to work fully. You know, you have to follow Dinachara. Like, there are particular medicines, when you eat them, you can't have sugar. There are some medicines, when you eat, you cannot have tamarind, sour things, and things like that. So, Dinachara is from morning till evening, how will you conduct your life? Connected with food, body, rest. Three things. So, first, moderate eating, not starving yourself and not overeating. Some people say we eat only once a day, but that once a day is elaborate. That's not yogic or Ayurvedic diet. You can eat 2 or 3 meals a day, it doesn't matter, but it should be moderate. You eat only what is required. When I say what is required, the principle in Ayurveda is, I was surprised. I heard a Sufi saying the same thing in one of his texts, I can't remember. The rule in Ayurveda is when you're eating, before you feel that you're fully satisfied, get up. You know that feeling that, now I am full. Before that, get up. Just before that. And give a lot of place for water, space. 3/4 food, 1/4 food, 1/4 water, and the rest, air. You need air also. So you see how much you can eat. So that. And second, when you eat, enjoy your food. There are people who say, oh, I'm eating food only for my survival. It is nonsense, because if you eat that way, it will not get properly digested. It's only when you enjoy the food that your hormones, digestive acids start working. So you should enjoy your food. Even though whatever quantity you have, enjoy it properly. And don't go to extremes. Don't say, oh, I love chili, so I'll mix chili in my food and eat all the time. It is nonsense. It will, afterwards, you get ulcers in your tummy. You won't realize it when you're young. Afterwards, it happens. So, keep everything moderate. You eat your chilies. Nobody says don't. But don't make your life chili-oriented instead of spiritually oriented. You know what I mean? So
Very good traditions.
yeah. And then you have food, whether I should eat veg or non-veg. Look, as far as yogic diet is concerned, vegetarian food is preferred for various reasons. Vegetarian food need not be flat, it need not be non-nutritious, it can be. The only thing I don't agree with is this thing called vegan. You don't even drink milk. Thousands of years, the rishis who were using milk, ghee, and so on, they're idiots. What do you mean? People who practiced Ayurveda, they knew it. There is no problem with that. Somebody wrote to me recently, and say, I became veg and now I'm suffering. I said, who asked you? I didn't ask to become veg.
Inflicted.
So,
But this freedom from one's own beliefs and one's own self-imposed restrictions, the freedom from one's own mind, I think is the biggest prison there is.
absolutely. So, therefore, we go back to where I started. First is to realize that we are chained, that we are enslaved by our own thoughts, by our own beliefs, by our own, for that you need to study it. And to study it, you cannot get away from it and study it. It has to be there. And when you've studied it properly, then you know how to handle it and get out of it. Because it comes out in such subtle forms, I think I'm free of a certain conditioning, and then suddenly in a situation it comes up. So awareness is a very important part of changing freeing yourself from the patterns. These patterns are the problems. Uh, and of that, the most important part is memory.
The
Memory.
past.
The past. And you need to get out of it before you can see the present. Because the truth that you seek is always in the present, it's not in the past. It has to be now. If it is not now, it's of no use to us. So, much of our problems are because we get stuck to this past and all that happened in the past. We need to free ourselves from that, understanding that it is not taking us anywhere, not even 1 inch towards the goal of freedom that we seek. And therefore, when you understand that it is part of memory, then you know that it's only like a tape, like a tape recorder keeps on constantly playing over and over again. If you realize that, then you can discard it. It's not easy, but it is possible. Now, one way is to substitute it with what we have now in such a way that the past is kind of cleared out. There is no space for the mind to think of and ruminate over what happened. When I was young, my father beat me up, so I'm still carrying it in my mind to beat somebody up. Just see that the mind, how it works its tricks on us. For that, awareness is essential. I think one of the functions of a spiritual teacher is to clean the mirror and show it and say, look, here you go. Nobody likes it. Unfortunately. So even that, we have to do it very slowly in a modest way so that you don't hurt people. Yeah, because nobody likes to see the mirror. Show them the mirror, either they'll throw the mirror and break it or run away from you. This fellow will keep showing the mirror, get out. But if you don't see yourself in the mirror, how are you going to change it? How are you going to change the image? So, there is a beautiful story. It's an allegory on spiritual realization by a Sufi writer called ancient, not now, Fariduddin Attar. Fariduddin Attar. He made attars, so he was called Attar. Fariduddin Attar wrote a book called Manti Kuttair, Conference of the Birds. In the Conference of the Birds, the guru or the chief bird is a huppu bird. And it takes the rest of the birds of different varieties on a pilgrimage to see the truth. And they have so many adventures where they see the chains in which they're bound, the adventures. And they break it. And finally they reach the top of the hill where the truth is enshrined inside a little shrine with 7 curtains. And they remove each curtain one by one. And then the hoppu says, see, this is the truth. They look and there's only a mirror there. And they see themselves. Conference of the Birds.
If I remember that correctly, I think only the Hopu reached. The others fell by the wayside. But is there a shorter, easier path of surrender? And today is Janmashtami, yesterday, today. So I just wanted to ask you about Krishna Leela, because what is this Leela and who are we? Are we spectators? Is this a spectacle? Can we surrender to it? What is the secret?
You know, the Leela should be looked at from its proper perspective. The Krishna Leela in the Bhagavad says that with all the gopis who were there, Krishna was there. So it is not like a human thing. There, I am with some lady going around in the dark, and I think I am a part of the Leela. No. Can you have 16,000 gopis and all be with each one of them at the same time? I mean, so it's a divine concept, this Leela. It's not anything to do with Hari Leela or somebody. So in this, the main thing for what the gopis understand is that Krishna is in their hearts. And the Krishna that they see is not an ordinary being, although they kind of sometimes show emotions which are very human. But they know that it is divine. And the commentary on the Bhagavad is the Bhagavad-Gita, actually. The Bhagavad-Gita, because it is only one place where Krishna becomes the Guru. In the Bhagavad-Gita, till then he is playing with the gopis, he is going to war with the Pandavas and the Kauravas and so on and so forth. But in the Gita, suddenly he acquires the teacher's role. Jagat Guru, Guru of the universe, Krishna becomes. So, if you go to the essence of the Gita, after so many other in different ways of reaching there, then he described, then when you are fully kind of, you say now, there is no way other than surrender. Till then, surrender is not an easy joke. You can't say today I'll surrender. It doesn't work that way. Surrender comes after you have seen that you have exhausted all the tricks in your trade and still you are not able to free yourself and reach the divine. Partly also because then I put too much importance to my effort. I am doing this, I am doing that. When that goes, that is surrender. When I understand that the little mind of mine which works with my frontal lobe, my brain, cannot sort out this problem, it is something else. Then I say this intellectual structure which I have built up, I abandon it. This is surrender. Now, for such a person who has reached that stage, it doesn't come in the beginning. If it comes in the beginning, Krishna or Vyasa or whoever would have said that quite early in the Gita, but it comes much later. What is the sloka? Sarva dharman paritveja mamekam sharanam vracha aham to sarva papebhyo moksha ichchami mashucha. Surrender all your dharmas to. It's not possible to do. People think it's very easy. You say, I have surrendered to Krishna. The moment you get tooth pain, I get phone calls. Please, I am going to the dentist, watch out. What surrender is this?
You're not a dentist in your
No,
part.
no, I keep telling
you.
Oh, believe me, this not only applies to dental trips, it also applies. Somebody has piles and I need to help. How do I do that? That's the problem with gurus in India. Anyway, so yeah, so that surrender is a big thing. It's not something which a normal a beginner in spiritual practice can do. It comes after a great deal of effort. It comes when Arjuna surrenders to Krishna, after realizing that he is not the ordinary person he thought he was. Till the Vishwarupa Darshana of the 11th chapter, that surrender is not taken place yet. After that, seeing that Arjuna has nothing, he can only say, you are the supreme ancient being. Tavam Madideva Purushaha Purana. He says, I don't know, I can't explain. That's surrender. Which means, when you find that the limited brain cannot handle this, it is beyond. That is the beginning of surrender.
World, I think fear, suspicion, doubt are also protections, because there are plenty of people out there who exploit and abuse.
Absolutely.
And with women, one hears horrible stories all the time.
Yeah.
So it's
why women? Men also.
Men also, there's a lot of exploitation and greed.
Yeah.
And exploitation for greed. I don't know if the pandemic is going to change and shift any of our economics. But how does one, even the concept of surrender,
Don't surrender to any human being, please. That's the last thing that you should do. There are no such 100% perfect human beings on this earth. Even if they are, it's not easy to it's not possible to recognize. So don't surrender to a being like that, a human being, or in this world, surrender to the higher. It's easy. It's better to surrender to a concept of freedom than to a personal being, because then invariably after some years you begin to discover that probably this guy has feet of clay, even though his head seems to be in the sky. So, and seeing all the things that are happening today, people proclaiming themselves as Jagat Guru, Mahagurus, and so on, one has to be very careful with this. The spiritual field is not where you don't doubt anything and you say, no. I think there is nothing wrong in this. Has been put into our heads. Oh, don't doubt me because I am the great. It's only for exploitation. Because a true spiritual teacher has nothing to lose if somebody has a doubt.
Yeah, that's my question also about trust in the world, because it can
Trust
lead
in
you
the world.
astray.
Yes, so we have to be careful. It's not as if, because see, anything can be exploited commercially. Anything. So it has become a practice to also exploit spiritual things in a commercial basis. So being intelligent human beings, we need to look at it carefully. Am I improving in my spiritual path, or am I falling helplessly into somebody's hands? Now this is, since the subject is chains, this is the final chain you have to escape from. Being enslaved or chained to your teacher. Out with it. And if the teacher is a good teacher, he will make sure that from the beginning you begin to taste parts of that freeing yourself from those chains. He'll make situations where you're becoming free. Otherwise you're enslaved. You're chained and you're seeking freedom. So this is something which is, it's a little tricky, but one needs to look at it carefully. Look at Adi Shankaracharya. I don't think anybody for a, for a vast period of time has that much knowledge, understanding, and also the capacity to intellectually describe and discuss about it like Shankara. He never, later on people did that also. They made him Shiva's avatara. Human mind is like that.
How
He
old
never,
was he when he died? About 32?
32,
32. So
roughly. He went to Kedar and disappeared. He never came back. But this great man, today almost of the commentaries that we have on the ancient texts are all done by him. And here is a man, he never called himself an avatar or anything like that. Even though afterwards they have been deified and they say he's Shankara, because his name happens to be Shankara Bhagavad-Pad. So that is something we need to note very, very carefully. I'm talking about Adi Shankaracharya, not the people who are in the mutts today, which of course he established. So this is a very important thing. So your love and affection for your teacher should not end up in being enslaved with golden chains to the image. There is all the more danger if the teacher happens to be an attractive person or things like that. So you have, you know what I mean. So that's very important to note, because it actually covers the truth. It doesn't take off the, there's a beautiful statement. These Upanishads and Vedas are fantastic. There is the Ishavasya Upanishad, in the last part, there is a sloka. Suvarna varnena patrena apasyapi hitam mukham tattvam pushan apavino satya dharmaya drishtave That means, O sun, or O glowing orb, not even sun, O glowing orb, remove that shining face of yours, which is blinding me so that I can't see the truth, so that I, a seeker, Satya Dharmaya Drishtave, want to see the truth. So remove that plate that shines and dazzles me. Suvarna Varnena Patrena, that beautiful plate, Patra, which is of Suvarna Varna or Hiranya Varnena, I forget, it is the same. So, if I remove that so that I can see you face to face, because I am the seeker of the truth, says the Rishi. So, when there is too much Suvarna Varna, be careful. Now, especially the Kerala government is going through a lot of trouble with gold being smuggled by diplomats. Ramakrishna Parama always said, watch out for gold, careful.
You also said, talk very honestly about gurus and setting people free instead of chaining them and in the organization. We've got a few minutes left. Amish, maybe you have some questions. Would you like to ask something?
Muted. Huh.
Are you mute?
Yeah.
I got it.
You know what? Because I was listening to Shriyamji earlier, and Shriyam, Gurudev, you said something very right, that there are gurus who are conscious of this from the beginning itself. Because it is natural, that it's not that you leave an attachment to become free, you leave an attachment for another attachment.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like for a greater attachment. And that also then becomes an attachment.
Yes.
And there are gurus, at times gurus who are not conscious of this, perhaps inadvertently also.
Maybe.
What should we do as bhaktas to, because as you said earlier that there are gurus who are careful. What about some gurus who aren't? What do we do? What do we as bhaktas do? I'm not talking about the gurus.
When you say bhaktas, you think of God. Don't think of the gurus. So if you want to surrender, sarvadharman paritvicha mamekam sharanam raja. So you don't surrender to any Tom, Dick or Harry. Sorry, I'm using a UK expression because you're now sitting there. So you surrender to the Supreme. Nothing else is required. You don't have to say, look, since we are on this subject, Swami Vivekananda is accepted today as, in those days also, as the main disciple of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, who selected him and said, Naren will lead. Yes. Important to note, did Swami Vivekananda not doubt Ramakrishna? Oh, he doubted him many times. That is the sign of a sadhak. Finally, after a great deal, then he said, okay, this man is extraordinary. And after Sri Ramakrishna's passing away, some of his own Guru Bhais, Swamiji's Guru Bhais, started doing the same kind of dancing and falling into trance and swooning. And Swamiji said, what is wrong with you guys? Don't think that you are Thakur. Don't pretend. You have weak nerves. Eat. Do exercise. In those days, every Ramakrishna mission had a gym. And Swamiji was fond of wrestling, I know Swami Ranganathananda, you must have heard of Swami Ranganathananda, a very famous person who also became the head of the Ramakrishna mission at some point later on. He said when he first met Swami Vivekananda in his young age, he told him, no, he didn't meet Swami Vivekananda. He met Mahapurush Maharaj, who was one of the direct disciples of Ramakrishna, Shivananda, not the Rishikesh Shivananda. And after looking at a young man, he is from Kerala, so he said, okay. So, how healthy are you? He said, Swamiji, Maharaj, I'm quite healthy, I think. eat good food, okay, and do a lot of exercise. So he said, so what? He said, come on, let's have a wrestling match. And he got off. And said, so why Swamiji was saying this was because you can't imitate Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. He's an extraordinary being. I can't imitate him and soon and say that I am also an avatar. Now, why would somebody call Ramakrishna an avatar? Swamiji said, for the only reason why I would put him in the avatar category is because you must read the letters of Swami Vivekananda. Very interesting collection. Personal letters. He said, I would put in the category. Why? Because most human beings follow one path in their lifetime and achieve. He said, here is a man, uneducated, a priest of the Kali temple from the remote village who left school at a young age saying that I don't want this education. Imagine those days, breaking free from the conditionings of education, of change. He said, and such a person went through all the disciplines that are in the Shastras in his lifetime. And he didn't live, I think he passed away at 53 or 54, I don't know, 52. From bhakti to yoga to tantra to Vaishnava tantras to Vedanta to went through everything, and which is not possible for an ordinary human being. He usually follow one path and attain. But here was a person who went through everything. So he said, therefore I can put him in that category. He's not an ordinary human being. But he was not attached to him. Believe me, let me finish this. 1 second, sentence more, Amish.
No, please.
Munshi. See, when Swamiji started the Ramakrishna mission, he said, they asked him, what deity shall we put at the temple? He said, I have seen all deities, pictures and different descriptions by people in the past, but I haven't seen a divine being like Ramakrishna, like Thakur. So let's put him there. There's nothing else I can say. But he made sure that in the Ramakrishna mission field, there are many ashrams which are called Advaita ashrams. They are called Advaita ashrams. They are not called Ramakrishna missions. They are called Advaita ashrams, but they are officially part of the Ramakrishna mission. In the Advaita ashram, there is no shrine. I mean, there is no Ramakrishna Paramahamsa's picture. There is no puja being done. There is a hall where you can meditate. So, what I'm saying, when he went traveling somewhere and came back to Mayavati in the Himalayas, it's a beautiful center there in the in Mayavati, near Almora. It was an Advaita ashram. He had classified it as an Advaita ashram because it is in the Himalayas. When he came back, he found a picture of Sri Ramakrishna hanging on the wall. He called his Guru Bhai and said, who put the old man up there? Take it out. Now you see this, he treated him like a god, but he didn't want the picture there. So you see, this is a great yogi, how he operates. Not that he didn't love him. He said, this is an Advaita ashram. Yeah. Take it off. This is the Advaita ashram. Take it off. If you want, keep it in your room. No problem. Not in the hall. There's only an Om there. Just an Om there. So, these are some things. So, therefore, sometimes it's a good thing to study the lives of such great beings. You know, you find so many things. That's why I'm telling you that it's a wonderful idea if you'd sometime read the letters of Swami Vivekananda. Now they've brought out a separate collection, culled from the complete works. There you see his personal heart, how it beats, how he works, how he gets upset when people get... When Master Mahashai, Sri M, who wrote the Gospel of Ramakrishna, not this M. When Master Mahashai first wrote the draft of Gospel and sent it to Swamiji, who was abroad, he got very upset. He wrote, there's a letter in the letters. He says, what is this, brother? What is this, Dada? He's older to him. why are you talking about all these miracles and things like that? I want a true spiritual biography of Ramakrishna. I don't want all this nonsense. Nonsense, he said.
Interesting.
He said, you're doing the same thing which others have done. I don't want this. Take it off. He said, I want exactly the meetings with Ramakrishna, what are his spiritual teachings, how he behaved with us. That's all I want. Don't bring all these things into this and spoil Thakur. He said, he's divine. Don't mix it up with anything else.
Interesting.
Phew.
Very interesting.
There you go.
The truth. So
Fascinating.
So, such great beings have been there. Ramakrishna,
Yeah, we should learn.
Viveka. Oh, there's much to learn. I think the complete works of Swami Vivekananda has come out much before its time. We may need to research and study it for another 100 years. If you look careful. Seriously.
Fair enough.
So, is it time?
Guruji?
Oh, it's
the
time.
time up now.
Yes, I believe so.
I thank the director of the Nehru Center for inviting us. Shri M, thank you.
Thank you.
And
Both of you, thank you very
thank
much.
the deputy director and the program assistant, Archana Pradhan, who's always very helpful, and the technical team of the Nehru Center. Thank you for hosting us.
And thank you. Hoping to see you all in UK maybe next year sometime.
Hopefully, Gurudev, I'll be delighted. I'll be delighted.
Let's.
No, we
Last
are
time, this year it didn't work. So
Yeah.
next year.
No, and chances are we may have a second wave. God knows, we may be stuck online only for at least I
No,
hope.
no,
For
no,
a
no.
while,
Don't,
but vaccines on the way. Let's
Yeah.
not lose hope.
don't worry. After September, October, I think it should clear up. We'll see.
Hope so. I hope so. But we can't wait to host you physically as well. Okay, it'll be an
I will
absolute
come.
delight. Thank you so much for coming back to the Nehru Center
Thank you very much.
and
Thank you.
honoring us with your presence once again. And Moini ji, you always such a wonderful supporter and patron of the Nehru Center. Thank you so much for organizing this.
Okay.
As I
Hari
said
Om.
last time, you gave us a home in London. So thank you.
Hari Om. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Hari Om.